Well, good evening again, everybody. It's been a while. This is the Heavy Metal Chemist once again, bringing another blog type post to you all. Not been making much recently because I've been away on business and doing other things which have kind of prevented me from making too many videos or audio clips for you. Unfortunately, but here I am anyway. So, this time I want to cover a bit of a kind of big thing in the next month, and that's our vote to either remain in or to leave the EU. From the United Kingdom standpoint, it's a very, very big thing. Which is basically going to determine whether we're all screwed or not quite as screwed as we could be otherwise for decades to come, really. I did actually mean to do this about a month ago, when the Her Majesty's government booklet came through. I think they could have come up with a slightly more snappy title than "Why the Government Believes that Voting to Remain in the European Union is the Best Decision for the UK." They could have done something a bit snappier along the lines of "Vote to Remain, we're better together," or something like that, but yeah, enough of that. I'll basically just go through this and use it as source material to kind of guide my discussion and my thoughts on this matter for my little blog post, and I've got a few things that I've pulled off the internet. But I should probably state from this standpoint that I'm very, very much pro-Remain. I mean, yes, the EU is far from perfect, but I think we're better off in than out. Because from what I've seen in the media and, talking to people, it's basically just immigration scaremongering by UKIP types that are trying to get us to leave the EU, and David Cameron's just played right into their hand and said, yeah, let's have a vote on it. But at the end of the day, this could really curse us all and leave us hanging in the depths of recession. And it's been forecasted from left, right, and centre that we're going to suffer for it. I mean, we're already suffering economically speaking. The pound's dropped against the euro from 140 odd down to 120 odd. It's dropped against the dollar, it's dropped against the yen, it's dropped against just about every currency going because of the uncertainty around the referendum, which is very, very bad for us. And if we leave, it's probably just going to get even worse. So, yeah, let's have a look at our little booklet then. Basically, it's stating that we have a special place in the EU. We never had to join the euro anyway. We keep our own border controls, we had those anyway. Political integration, well, that's already fairly set in stone, I think. Not a lot more we can do about that. I'm just going through the booklet here. If you've got a copy, follow along the first page. Migrants having restrictions on welfare, well, that's understandable. If I was to move to another country, I'd expect to work or to study or something. I'm not going to just do it for the hell of it. Reducing EU red tape, yes, that is an important thing. I don't see why we should have a particularly special place in the EU, and we've got the second largest economy in the EU after Germany, but and being the only other nuclear power aside from France, and 5 in the world: China, the US, Russia, us and the French, which have nuclear weapons. So that's like the UN Security Council thing, but that's a completely different issue. So yeah, we're currently the second strongest economy in the EU, apparently, as I believe the numbers, but I'm just pulling this off the top of my head. So yeah, that could decidedly change if we leave. But if I go on to the next page, which is a stronger economy, again, recently I've read numbers that about half of our trade is with the EU. That's understandable given the close proximity, and given that if we leave, we lose access to the common market. And Obama wasn't wrong in saying that if you want to negotiate a trade treaty, these things take years, sometimes up to a decade. Canada's just done it with the EU, that's taken 10 years. If we were to leave the EU, well, yeah, that's going to take 10 years to negotiate treaties. And even if we want to still trade with the EU, we have to abide by all the rules anyway, so why not remain? It saves negotiating a load more contracts, and there's a lot of jobs tied with it. And forecasts were something like 800,000 jobs might go on the worst case, but it could even be worse than that for a recession. Who knows, really? I'm sorry if you hear me supping on wine. It's a good strawberry blend I picked up from an English heritage site. So the EU, next page is improving our lives. Yeah, I've already mentioned the economic cost of the pound, which would push living costs up significantly. It's already pretty expensive to live in this country if you don't make a lot of money, and if your prices go up significantly, well, it's going to make that a whole lot more difficult. So I'm basically, what I'm just going to keep reiterating throughout this blog type thing is, don't have a knee-jerk reaction just because there's a few immigrants coming in. Yeah, I mean, they're doing jobs that people don't want to do. Same time, they pay taxes, they're contributing to the economy. They're not just here sponging off the benefit system. I know some people do that, but there are methods in place of dealing with those kind of problems. And the other thing being, if we do leave, it's going to make travelling to Europe a lot more expensive than it already is. We already pay quite a lot of money in fuel duty and all that kind of stuff. That's sure to rise. Exchange rates will be far less favourable than they currently are, so it'll be even more expensive to go abroad. If you own property abroad, as a few of my friends do, then yeah, that's going to get even more expensive. Yeah, mobile charges will go up. Generally, everything will go quite nasty. And before I even mention healthcare, I'll come on to the NHS later. The EHIC, as it was formerly known, European Health Insurance Card, allows you basically free healthcare, or free emergency healthcare anyway, across the EU, which we would lose out on if we left. Okay, so what would happen if we leave? Years of uncertainty, economic disruption, yep. Investment go down, yep. Cost jobs, yep. 10 plus years of crazy shit happening with the economy, and we'd have to renegotiate treaties with the EU and hundreds of, not necessarily hundreds, but lots of countries around the world. And people are saying, yeah, we can strike a deal because, we're the UK, we're like former colonial shit. It's like the world doesn't work like that. Nobody wants a quick fix. It takes forever to do these kind of treaties and all that kind of shit. So, yeah. Whereas, again, it's reiterated that 50% of our trade is with the EU, so, yeah, it's a fairly big thing, really. More on immigration. Yeah, I mean, we have control of our own borders. I know people with an EU passport can come in. Again, people were worrying about Turkey being admitted to part of the EU, but they've still got a long way to come before that happens. Having spent some time there recently, if any of my close friends have heard the story, we basically ended up stranded in Ataturk airport for a night in Istanbul, which was a far less than pleasant experience. I won't go into that in any more detail, but needless to say, I do not believe that Turkey is ready to join the EU in any way, shape or form in the near future. And if we remain in the EU, at least then we get a veto, or at least some power in saying whether they can join the EU or not. Because I know that country has a few certain misdemeanours with a human rights record and so on. And again, we get all the positive interactions with Europe with regard to terrorism, security, and Interpol and Europol and all that kind of stuff. helping to keep us safe. So anyway, yeah, we are quite secure in Europe, NATO as well. Don't know what happened to NATO if we left the EU, but generally with Russia being as belligerent as they are in recent years, it's probably better that we remain together. I mean, I know NATO is the kind of military side of things, the EU is more the political side of things. It's still probably better that we remain for, the security side of things. But again, anybody from the UK can go and study and work in anywhere in the EU if you felt like it. I mean, there's plenty of jobs in Germany and Scandinavia. That's places where I'd consider working. I don't just have personal interest in this for work reasons. Being an academic, I get a lot of my funding from the EU, or I can get access to a lot of funding from the EU, which is very, very beneficial to UK research, which would certainly suffer if we did decide to leave. And as you can imagine, that would be very, very bad for kind of technology development, startups and all that kind of stuff. People coming out of universities. I mean, I don't agree with the present establishment at all. I'm very, very liberal politically. But that's another argument entirely. So, again, this little booklet emphasises that we have a special status. We keep the pound, keep control of our borders to a degree. I mean, yeah, anybody with an EU passport can come in, but we still do check everybody rather than just allowing them free access as the Schengen zone does, although the recent migrant crisis between Turkey and Greece and Italy and all that kind of stuff's putting strain on Schengen, and it's not looking good for that at the minute, but basically you can hop on a plane, an EasyJet flight to wherever and have a cheap holiday anywhere, but that would probably be in jeopardy if we left the EU. Next page, once in a generation decision. Yes, it most certainly is. Definitely, if you're young, vote, for God's sake. Don't just stay at home and twiddle your thumbs on Thursday the 23rd of June, I believe the date is. Don't just sit at home and twiddle your thumbs. Get out there, get off your arse, go and vote. Preferably vote to remain. Don't just be one of those kind of knee-jerk people that's going, oh, immigrants, ah! And listening to all the scaremongering from a few odd Tories, most of the Labour parties with remaining in the EU, most of the SNPs remaining in the EU, the Green Party's with it, I think the Lib Dems are, as is half the Tory party, as much as I hate to agree with half the Tory party. So, and that is just about the end of yon booklet, with the emphasis of protecting jobs, stronger economy, and providing security. Yeah, it does emphasise some fairly good points. I mean, there's a couple of other little links that I pulled up off the internet, if I can find the file. Euromits bust. This was posted by a friend of mine on Facebook a while ago. Most of our laws come from Brussels, number one. About an eighth of our laws come from Brussels. This is basically just everything that mentions the EU is a passing reference or a definition or other stuff. Also, basically, only a tiny portion of our laws affect the EU. There's more on this later. Number two, European laws are made by unelected bureaucrats. The European Commission only proposes laws. It's the elected European Parliament, that's when you vote for your MEP, and other stuff that debate and amend the laws and ultimately pass that on to legislation, which we then have to work into our own national law. But some of that has been quite beneficial. Again, they're going to come on to that. Number 3, Norway and Switzerland enjoy all the benefits despite not being an EU member. They still have to pay into the EU. Money's a concern of the Brexit campaign. But to be fair, I think what we pay is probably nowhere near as much as the benefits we get from being in the EU in terms of either farmers' subsidies or other benefits. I'm not sure of the exact numbers, but if you add everything up, staying in is definitely better for us economically. Again, so yeah, the Norwegians have to pay into the EU, but they don't get the same benefits we do. Number 4, EU migrants are a drain on the UK economy. They pay taxes. And an estimate from the economists at University College London, according to this, estimates they contributed about £2 billion a year to the economy between 2001 and 2011. The EU does nothing to help ordinary people. At number 5. This is a very, very contentious one because EU regulation has basically encouraged safe working hours, maximum of 48 hours a week, unless you want to work overtime. Actual annual leave, so that everybody gets 28 days a year. Parental leave, so that everybody gets maternity or paternity leave, as you wish. And we also have the EU to thank for the feminist argument. I wouldn't class myself as a feminist, but I'm very much pro-equality in that respect. That men and women should receive equal pay. That came from the EU ultimately. Argument number 6 is our most important markets are China and the USA. No, they aren't. Half of our exports go to the EU, accounting for about 3.5 million jobs. We sell apparently more to the Netherlands than to the whole of China. I'm just pulling this off a post I found on the internet. Number 7, the European Court of Human Rights forces its will on the UK. European Court of Human Rights actually has nothing to do with the EU. It's part of the Council of Europe, which is a completely separate entity, set up partly by us after the Second World War, probably to prevent nasty things from happening again. The EU was actually originally intended to be to basically prevent World War III from happening, which it has done to a degree, or mainly to stop the Germans, no offence to my German friends, from going to war with the rest of us. So, and then finally number 8, the British are different. Yes, well, every nation in the EU is different, really, including the Czech Republic and Slovakia, despite the fact that I still know it as Czechoslovakia from growing up, and everything that was formerly Yugoslavia. Everybody's got their own languages, cultures, history, law. No one joins the EU to lose their identity. The EU motto is actually united in diversity. And maybe I should stick the EU national anthem on here, which I believe is the Ode to Joy. It's quite a nice piece of music, actually. So, there's just a few little crazy arguments, either for or against remaining in the EU. I mean, hopefully that's kind of put things into perspective, really. I mean, the only thing that the Brexit campaign seems to have a leg to stand on, reason-wise, is A, we pay money to the EU, and B, immigration. Immigrants. They're going to kill us all and eat our babies. No, they're not that bad. Especially when you look at what's happening in Calais and how the French are treating the immigrants, it's really not good. But with respect to those two points, in terms of the money, yes, we pay to be in the EU, but the benefits far outweigh the cost. Far outweigh the cost. Do a bit of research yourself. Have a look. Yeah, you'll come up against some kind of Toryist propaganda or something that is saying, we pay too much, or UKIP or something, but, ultimately it's down to the kind of minority that wouldn't normally vote. Not necessarily a minority, there's quite a lot of people that don't normally vote to get out and do it. Because otherwise all this scaremongering is going to result in the kind of cranky, really old people or cranky far-right type going, immigrants are taking my jobs, mate, fucking dickheads. Going to result in an excess of that, forcing us to leave, which ultimately I really do not want. So yeah, that'll be a very bad thing. Just on June the 23rd, I believe it's June, I'm going to check that date actually. Yep, Thursday, June the 23rd, get your ass down to the polling station, either before work, or after work, or even on your lunch break, or whatever. Go and vote, and if you've got any sense, vote to remain. If you're feeling like an idiot, vote to leave. So I hope this has provided a bit of an insight, giving you my thoughts on it, and hopefully it will cause you to kind of think about what's going on, think about the reasons people are saying things. People outside the UK are saying if we leave, it's bad. That's because they know what they're talking about. If they say, you leave, you are screwed, that's because if we leave, we are screwed. Heed their words and, be sensible. And hopefully we'll manage to pull through this without making a royal cock-up of things. So I hope this has helped a little bit, and will act as a bit of a decent guide to the whole situation. I think this is also my longest blog to date, so hopefully I've not bored you all, but yeah, anyway, it's now, 11:15, so I should probably stop recording and get some sleep. Good night, everybody, and I would say God bless, but I'm an atheist, so I will not force that upon you. Not that I like to force my beliefs upon anybody. That's something for another day.